Everybody to a Sharpen That Axe minisode. That's what I'm calling it now. It's been decided. It's a minisode.
Minnesota, like
Minis,
Minnesota.
miniature episode. Let's start again. No, it's not. Welcome. So this is basically we started. This is our second one of these, I believe. Essentially, where we essentially take a bite-sized idea or chunk of stuff to work on, and we basically flesh it out. Just discuss what's been going on in the world of guitar stuff and how can we like improve our tone or guitars we like. So yeah, that's basically what we're opening it up to today. Also, we don't have time. That's basically the main thing. We want to
Yeah,
put out stuff.
we need more content, and this is
Who
a
are
way
we
to get
kidding here?
content out.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so we've got a couple of things to talk about today. The first one, John brought to my attention today. My name is Dylan Murphy, by the way. If this is your first episode, please don't start with this one. Go back to, we have loads of lovely interviews.
Stop what you're doing right now. Just pause it and come back to it.
Pull over the car.
To an interview or something. So, get a better sense of what we're about.
We have possibly dozens of episodes. I don't know. Haven't checked. So the first thing...
70, I don't know.
Oh, okay, that's good. Sweet. Well, if episode 100 just like passes us by, we're gonna have to do something for it. So, John, rock is dead, or is it, according to Pete Townshend? Townshend.
Townshend? No.
Head of the
So Pete Townshend, of course, guitarist from The Who. Big news. The quote was rock-based guitar is dead. There's no more. And that's kind of the headline for this thing. Of course, this is only like the 100th time we've heard about it in, I don't know, the last 6 months. So there's always someone coming out. Normally it's some fan of dad rock who is just trash posting on Facebook about, oh, there's no good guitar players. And I've certainly complained about that plenty on this podcast. And I'm sick and tired of old dudes complaining about it. However, and I kind of jumped on the bandwagon of like, oh, I'm tired of this kind of nonsense from people who are, they're just kind of barely making it on the last legs of their career. Or it's old guys who just refuse to listen to anything else. I was wrong. So the headline is a little misleading. And I'm looking at the article here. This is off of Ultimate Classic Rock. So... Of course, where else is it going to be?
2 adjectives right there, okay.
Yeah, but the original interview can be found in the Dallas News. It's actually a good, he has a lot of good things to say. So he did say the guitar may be losing ground, but in part that's because if you spend an hour on YouTube or Instagram, you will quickly discover unknown people playing the guitar in a way a great orchestral violinist like excuse me, like a Yehudi Menuhin. Oh my gosh. I just, all of my classical friends are just going to hate me for not being able to pronounce that correctly. Once might have played his instrument. So the point is, what he goes on to say is essentially like, these guitarists can shred like Eddie Van Halen or play jazz like John McLaughlin. They've literally exhausted the possibilities of the guitar. This kind of virtuosity is already happening with beatbox-based rap and with laptop-supported pop. Everything will change again, maybe faster than it did for guitar music. Who knows? He continued and said, guitar-based rock and roll, it's not that it's losing ground, not rock itself. Hip-hop is rock to my ears. Music for the neighborhood, the street, disenfranchised, and the downtrodden. That used to be what I focused on. And now I try to write real operas. I want my stage work to be like art installations, and why not? Kanye West is doing the same thing. Yeah, I'll debate that a little bit. But he goes on to say, I'm not complaining. I had my day. And we just wanted to connect. He described himself, though, as addicted to music on social media. I think I am connected today to about 20 or 30 young musicians and artists who I would not have found without Instagram, YouTube, and Bandcamp. This is living in the moment for me. We will sort this out. We should not panic. There are always good and bad sides to new tech. Okay, so I'm going to kind of give my rundown on what he's saying here. So in my mind, he's kind of coming across and saying, there's loads of good guitar players, and there's so many of them that he is admitting he would not have found if it weren't for Instagram, YouTube, Bandcamp.
Hmm.
We've said the same thing here. So I have to give some credit to him. He's not saying like the guitar is dead. What he is, I feel like he is relating the guitar to classical violin, just saying, well, there's nothing left to be done with the instrument.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I agree with that. And
Okay.
I'm not sure I would agree that there's nothing left to be done with a violin either. I think there's a lot you can do, but that's sort of my initial 2 cents. I think it's some of the headlines are a little more sensational than they need to
Yeah.
be.
Well, it's clickbait to an
Yeah,
extent.
exactly. Well, it worked on me, so there you go. But I feel like he's actually coming more across and saying that the guitar-based rock is kind of on its way out. It's sort of the same thing that Rick Beato has said, but at the same time, there's more access to the instrument. There's more access to music now than there ever has been, and he admits that. And I
Yeah.
think Rick Beato would as well. So I don't know. That's kind of my initial take on it. What are your thoughts?
Interesting. First of all, I kind of have to tip my hat to Pete for, I don't know, for first of all, so the thing about the Who, right? You kind of have to dissect who's saying this, right? And the Who, the way he's talking about what he's talking about hip hop being what it is today in terms of inspiring people. Like the Who did that because they were really groundbreaking. They blew up all their stuff on stage. They smashed guitars. They were like the pioneers of that. They were a really, really dangerous band back in the day. Two of the members died from overdosing, or
Right.
like alcohol abuse. So that's got to play a factor in the whole message that he's saying. In terms of like the instrument being exhausted, that's a really, really big statement to make. I wouldn't agree with it. I think it's, I it's interesting because there's so many ways you can approach what he's saying. I think when you break it down into genres of music, there is always going to be like a cult following for certain genres of music where the guitar itself as an instrument is going to continue to have appeal. Country music, metal, even jazz guitar, like people like Oz Noy and people like that, still really attract like big crowds. So I think the idea that we have of classic rock or bands like that, yeah, that as a genre with is as it's dying out. But it's in terms of like the guitar itself as an instrument, I don't think it's exhausted at all. I think that our idea of what classic rock might be in terms of like devil horns and Jack Daniels has gone the way of so many of the guitarists that have died. But I feel that the guitar as an instrument is still extremely popular, and like you see it. I mean, you're never, as many music teachers have told me, you're never going to be seen stuck for students who want to learn the guitar. Like there's always going to be people who want to learn it, and yeah, I think that it's interesting. I applaud him staying up to date with what's popular and for using social media to find new music, but you know he's an old guy. I think and Pete Townshend is a notorious sort of, he loves attention. He really does. So I'm kind of on the same wavelength as you, John. I think I appreciate you bringing it up because it really is an interesting topic. You've got a lot of elements to pick apart from even just the singular statement.
Yeah, I think so. I like your background there on the Who, and I
Mm,
think kind of more what he's getting at is the idea of rock being a revolutionary vehicle, and he's kind of saying the same thing about hip hop. So rock has kind of passed that torch, and we've heard a lot about this, and maybe at one time I feel like that might have been the case, but in some ways I feel like music is so prolific now that
yeah.
is there really a dangerous style of music, or should there be even? To be honest, I don't know. I don't even know if music should necessarily always be revolutionary, always be something that's in somebody's face for one reason or another. But I think as an expression of who the artist is, I think that's fine. If some of that is revolutionary, fine, and if some of it isn't, fine. You know, um, I think there's plenty of rock music out there that still has something to say and to speak to people in one way or another. So I wouldn't say that means it's dead.
Yeah. No, that's no, good point. Shall I move on to our second and last section?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I don't really have anything else to say. So.
Do I? Sweet. So, John, you mentioned earlier that we should maybe discuss lesser known brands of guitar. So rather than kind of drag it out with 2 or 3 brands each, I said why not pick one each. So, do you want to go first?
Sure. So my pick is Legator Guitars. So Legator. So if you haven't heard about them, what's kind of cool about these guys is they're relatively new on the scene, and they have a handful of artists. One of them that I've been listening to recently is the brains behind Buried. That is Berried.
Okay.
Berry, as in like strawberries, alive.
Okay.
His name is Charles Caswell.
Okay.
And anyway, there's also a few other guys. People. A lot of them are kind of metal. There's a few. What do you call them? Sort of more jazz-oriented guitarists. But one of the cool things I find about this brand is they have a wide range of kind of mid-range guitars, so anywhere from that 400 to 500 range, and then they go on up to that 3,000, and all your variations that you could possibly want, everything from kind of a telly style to your headless 8-string gent machine. And I think the price point too, so you can get a pretty good guitar for right around $1,000.
Cool.
Some great paint jobs, good woods, great manufacturing, and they're just I think that they're a solid brand that's really been able to establish themselves. And we've talked about this a lot before, that smaller brands like this are kind of gaining more market share, because for $1,000 I can get a guitar that looks sweet, plays sweet, and has a lot of capability to it, instead of or I can get an entry level USA Telecaster. I feel like you get more bang for your buck when you start looking at some of these other brands, and I really like what Legator is doing, and kudos to them. And they can feel free to send us a free guitar that we can demo on the podcast. We'll even work out some sort of sponsorship deal if they're willing. So, but
we're always willing.
Always willing. Yeah,
that should be like the logo of the motto of the podcast. Just always willing.
Oh,
these are funky looking guitars. It looks like something that Philip Joyce, I think, would really enjoy, the whole headless.
I think though, if you take a look at you've got the headless ones. The Ninja series kind of have a look like an ESP or an Ibanez type guitar. They are kind of your super strat shred machine type things. But again, they play fantastic. They sound fantastic. You do have a lot of options there. And like I said, I mean, if you want to spend $3,000, you can spend $3,000, or you can get a really good guitar for under $500. So, and I definitely say check them out. They're worth your while. I like what they do, and I like the fact that they stand behind their stuff. They're built in Sun Valley, California.
Okay,
so
cool.
Local.
There's some really good price points here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So very interesting. I think in terms of it's a head turner of a guitar. It really is. Just in terms of you'd want to be like a good metal player, or be really into that to boast one of these.
Yeah, I think K-Mac, the YouTube plays one of these.
I love him.
He plays the bright green one, if I'm not mistaken. I think he plays, I think he does.
Did he tell you why he plays bright green guitars? Or did
you? Have you seen that?
Funny. The green screen.
The green screen.
Laugh my ass.
Because it can be any color. So,
snapping his fingers. Sweet. So I have chosen something a bit different, rather than a lesser known guitar. I'd say it's more of like an overlooked guitar, because it's been around for quite a while. So,
Yeah.
John, if I was to say the brand Fernandez, are there any images that or players that spring to mind? It's a spicy.
Typically, I think of their sustainer and the
Yes.
edge.
Okay,
So
cool. So the sustainer, what do you know about the sustainer? I've been doing my research.
so gosh, it's been ages, but from what I remember, it's basically it kind of creates a feedback loop essentially, and just kind of
Yeah.
helps sustain the note. So the if I recall, they had a model initially where the sustainer was built in,
Yes.
and then the Edge had that guitar, and eventually they released the sustainer as something that you could get separately. And
Yes.
yeah,
So that
okay.
is what the Edge has started doing. He has bought the sustainer separately, and I think he's added it to one of his American strats, for like With or Without You, or some of the bigger U2 numbers. But yeah,
Yeah.
this is a really interesting. It's funny because I was going through a few blogs and a few forums, and a lot of people were saying that Yamaha is, a really overlooked guitar brand. Because everything they do, it's solid.
Yeah,
Steve Gadd.
especially their acoustic stuff, man.
Yeah,
Always
I mean,
recommend their acoustic guitars. If
very
you're
much
looking
so.
for a
Yeah.
guitar under $200-300, that's it.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And even in terms of other instruments, like you've got Billy Sheehan from from the '80s and beyond,
In the
from
early '90s, let's be
and the early
fair.
'90s, plays Yamaha basses. Steve Gadd plays Yamaha drums. It is a good instrument brand. But for guitars, you don't find a lot of people apart from maybe Santana, back in the day.
Right.
Yeah, not anymore. He, like myself, is a slave to PRS. But so I've done some
They're just
research.
guitars.
Yeah, so it turns out that there's a lot of players that have, back in the day, have used Fernandez and kind of moved on because they are a bit of a budget model. I remember the first Fernandez I saw was like it was like a cover spread of the band Velvet Revolver.
Oh my
Back in the day.
gosh.
And their other
Wow.
guitar player, Dave Kirshner, used like this really cool sort of Les Paul, but it had a bit more of an edge in the body, and that's their one of their most popular models. It's called a Ravel, but it turns out like the iconic green Stratocaster that Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day uses is a Fernandez.
Oh really?
The guitar that Kirk Hammett used on the Ride the Lightning album and tour was a Fernandez. Kurt Cobain used a Fernandez, and the thing is, like, they're still going. They're still a brand. They still make guitars. They're based out of Japan, much like Yamaha. There is a lot of Yamaha comparison there. But the thing is, what strikes me about them is that if you want a Les Paul, if you want like a Jackson shape, if you want a Strat or a Telly, they do it all, and all for really cheap. Which is, we know that Japanese guitars are consistently good quality, just in terms of a lot of the time they are. So if you go on Reverb and you're like, I want a decent Telly or a decent, Les Paul or like a Jackson dinky style guitar, these ones seem to have a really high rating and a really good price point as well. A lot of, this massive company in Japan, a lot of heavy metal guitarists coming out of Japan used it. And yeah, no, I thought it was just like a really interesting, just to kind of throw myself into a brand that I didn't know a lot about and learn about it. Because, we, apart from the big 3 or 4 or 5 guitar brands, we don't really pay attention to a lot. I mean, you and I like to do our job in shining a light on more independent guitar brands, and yeah, I think it's important to keep an open mind when it comes to selecting a guitar these days.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess it's because I'm on Reverb now looking at it, and there's a lot of these. They're great looking guitars, like that you can get one of these Tellys for $500. Like they're fantastic. Or kind of a Jaguar model. There's all kind, and like gorgeous Les Paul with this quilted maple top.
Yeah.
$789. So. And you're right. They do the Flying V thing. They do the Telecaster model. They do, of course. They might get in trouble for the Flying V now.
Well, that's our next episode.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. So I feel like it's not one that came to my mind. I'll put it that way. But I definitely like. I like the pick. I think you're right on the money there. And if you're looking for a budget model that still plays well, that looks good, that sounds good, I think they put a lot of effort into the way things sound. Like they have a good sound to them. So I think that's fantastic.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
good
glad
stuff.
you agree. Friends, if you wouldn't mind giving us a review on iTunes, or even just like a 1 or 2 line review, it really helps us out a lot, or whatever your podcasting platform is. We really appreciate it. We've got some really nice interviews coming up. We're having Jens Larsen back on the show, recurring guest and friend of the show, who is going to tell us everything we got wrong about jazz in our recent jazz episode, and to plug his new book, which looks unreal. So, John, anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so. Buy more guitars.
No more
That's
guitars.
yeah,
If my girlfriend knew that I was looking up guitars on Reverb right now, she'd fucking kill me.
yeah.
But she's out of the house.
Woo!
John, friends, everybody listening, stay sharp.